Our next question. What will you do to protect near downtown neighborhoods from more developments like City Place? City Place is that thing on 5th Avenue near William, if I'm correct. Okay. And Chuck, you go first on this one.
So, yes, as Gus was saying, City Place is that development on 5th and just south of William, over by Bethlehem Church, south of the library. This is one where there were two proposals that were there for the site. The proposal that ended up getting built was a proposal that conforms with city zoning. It demolished some historic buildings, and I think that was the worst possible outcome for that site. There is also a proposal to maintain the facades, the fronts of the buildings, but then redevelop behind them. And then there were many people in the community who were hoping that neither of those would go forward and the traditional homes would be maintained. The Planning Commission has just gone through a process to modify the way the zoning works in those areas that are zoned for multi-resident buildings. The reason both of those proposals, the City Place and the one was called Heritage Row, were in front of the community is because the current zoning allows for parcel consolidation. You can buy up several houses, combine them into one parcel, and then that changes the map for what can and cannot be built there. There's a proposal going through, it's been passed through the Planning Commission, and they're working on developing the ordinance language for it to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's something that I support. I think that's a good way to make sure that that kind of parcel consolidation doesn't occur again. I think that's an important protection of those streets, and I think that's a real step forward, and I'm glad to see it happening.
First of all, that particular development had a historic preservation sidebar to it, or maybe it was the main bar. We could have prevented that if the council had passed the historic district, which was proposed. There was a citizen committee that worked for a year to get a historic district proposal together, and council chose not to pass it. But aside from that, moving to a more general question, the Citizen Advisory Committee for the R4C and R2A zone lots has presented a report. It was my impression that Planning Commission has not yet considered it, but perhaps I'm behind. Anyway, I support the findings of that Citizen Advisory Committee, which include, as Chuck was saying, barring consolidation of lots, which led to having this sort of huge multifamily thing. I also think that council needs to be taking more responsibility for when they do site approvals. The council has always had the ability to override even Planning Commission recommendations, although they do it very rarely. But council in latter years has gotten really intimidated. It's like, well, it seems to fit the criteria, so I guess we have to pass it. But I think that council has to take into effect how a site plan affects our overall planning goals and community goals, to the extent that law allows, obviously, and in particular looking at health and safety issues for the neighborhood.
Chuck, would you like a minute to continue?
Just briefly, we have a former member of Planning Commission here. Erica, can you update us on the status of the process?
I believe that it's just made it through working session at this point, but I think that's where it stands.
So it's made it through working session, so thank you for that clarification.
Vivienne? Okay. The person who asked the question, who would that be? Are you happy? Was that your question? Are you happy with the answers? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead then. Next one. What specifically would you like to do about the city employee pension fund deficit? And I think it's Vivienne's turn to start.
I don't have a solution. I have not really studied this particular issue in depth. I do think that it is a valuable area to look at. One thing I would not consider would be to alter the pensions that existing and retirees are getting. Many cities are struggling, many municipalities and states and so forth are struggling with this issue of pensions. We have to keep the promises we've made, and clearly it's going to take a lot of analysis to figure out how to fix the pension system ongoing, and it's much more than I can take on in 4 minutes.
Thank you. This is an important issue. This is an issue that's been years in building, and it's going to be an issue that's going to be years in fixing. So I think it's an important one the City Council needs to be looking at, especially through the budget process. My understanding is that first of all, there are 2 elements to this that need to be looked at. One is the city pension fund deficit, and there's also the city health fund deficit. Both are concerns. And I'm going to miss which one was which. My understanding is that one of them had been fully funded prior to the stock market dip, and then and that's one where we're closer. Then the other one was farther away. There were also, I believe, changes in the federal standards for accounting that have put a lot of municipalities and other institutions into an oh no situation. So it's absolutely something we need to be looking at. Like Vivienne, I don't have the 5-point proposal for how we do, but it's going to be something that absolutely we need to consider for the long-term financial health and sustainability of our city.